Dawn of the jet age. Like the wheel, the jet engine fundamentally changed humanity as we know. The jet engine is any class of internal combustion engine that propel an aircraft by any means of the rearward discharge of the jet fluid. Usually, hot gases are generated by burning fuel and air drawn out to the atmosphere. What this is basically saying is all jet engines are exactly the same. The thrust is generated by the exhaust that comes off or comes out of the jet engine. Um, the exhaust comes out one end, it forces the aircraft forward because of the thrust generated by that exhaust that it creates. Advantage over piston engines. Airplanes with jet engines have far fewer moving parts. Less moving parts means more reliability. Also, just inherent to a jet engine in itself, jet engines are far more powerful and efficient than piston engines. This is extremely apparent anywhere you want to look. Jet engines compared to piston engines um, typically operate at 40 to 1 or 50 to 1 compression ratio, where most passenger cars operate on a 10 to 1 basis. So what's that saying? What that is saying is air is be able to compress a lot further down in a jet engine, and as such, you mix more fuel, you have a larger fire, and you make more horsepower that way. So pound for pound, the jet engine is far more powerful than a piston engine. All right, historical importance. The jet engine was developed and put into operation during World War II. However, the development and advent of jet engines came very late toward World War II, at the end of World War II, where it didn't have much impact or overall, uh, effect during the war. Um, Obviously, it would revolutionize the aviation industry as a whole because almost every commercial aircraft or every military aircraft you fly, doesn't matter if it's a plane, helicopter, they all use the jet engine in one variation or another, either TurboJet, TurboFan, TurboProp, or TurboShaft. And we'll get into those different variations further in. How a jet engine works, how I was explaining to you before, um, it's just using that thrust that is developed from the exhaust to push the aircraft forward. Again, we'll get in more to that when I show you diagrams of how they work. Most aircraft today, especially commercial aircraft, when you board an airliner, I would say the vast majority of them, if not all, use turbofan engines. A turbofan engine is a variation of the turbojet engine. The turbojet is basically the engine that actually spins that giant fan at the front of the engine, thus the name turbofan. Two men are credited for creating the jet engines independently from one another. Frank Whittle, he was a Brit, and then you also have Hans Pabst von Ohan. He was German. Um, Frank Whittle originally applied for and got a patent in 1930 um, for the development of the jet engine. Um, and then he later let that lapse in 1934. And then Pabst van Ohan applied for a patent in 35, and it kind of went back and forth, and they kept developing that jet engine further. And we'll get into that here. All right, Frank Whittle, again, he first patented in 1930. The engine that he actually built, the very first one that was flown, jet engine that he was able to fly in an operational aircraft, was a centrifugal flow turbojet. And he also later on also designed the turbofan when he submitted a patent for that in 1936. He joined the Royal Air Force in 1923. He attended the Royal Air Force Academy. While he was at the academy, he wrote a thesis on the future developments in aircraft design. This contained his thoughts on how a gas turbine engine might work, and that's when he filed the patent about 2 years after that in 1930. And then after graduation, of course, since he was in the academy, worked as a test pilot for the Royal Air Force. In 1934, as I was saying, his patent expired. His brother goes on to say that he let it lapse in 1934 because it didn't have the £5 or $5 in order to keep that active. In 1936, he took leave from the Royal Air Force to further develop his jet engine. 1936, he refined his previous patent for a new one, this time for a bypass jet engine, or TurboFan, and I'll get into that here later. Although it wasn't until 1943 that Whittle would start to test turbofan concepts. Whittle founded PowerJets Limited in 1936, working a jet engine model in 1939. His design first took flight on 15 May 1941 when it powered a Gloster E-2639. English nationalized his company in 1944 for the war effort. All right, this is Frank Whittle's first design. This is the W1 and his subsequent design, the W2. The reason I put the W2 in here is just because of this cutaway. Makes it easier to explain. Here you can see on the right the first concept. Each one of these round cylinders here are actually individual combustion chambers, and if you count those up, he's got 10 combustion chambers here. But anyway, all jet engines work the same. Basically, you have your intake, your air is here coming from the outside. Your intake goes down into your impeller, your centrifugal impeller that compresses the air. The air then goes up into the combustion chambers, pressurized about, well, today's jet engine's about 40 or 50 to 1 in here. Then fuel is mixed, as well as spark in the combustion chambers. And of course, that high pressure exhaust gas, highly compressed and combusting, needs to flow out of the exhaust here. As it flows out the exhaust, it turns your turbine. That turbine is connected via a shaft right here, and that shaft is connected to your compressor blades. In his case, it was a centrifugal compressor, so that's what made his continuous jet engine work. As those hot gases escaped out of the exhaust here, that is what pushed the aircraft forward. As you can see here's his combustion chambers. Here's the exhaust. As the again, air comes in, gets compressed, flings out to the outside as compressed air up into the combustion chambers, mixes with fuel and spark, expands, goes through the turbine, which continues to spin the compressor blades, and then exits out the back for forward flight. This was his W1 concept engine. Here is the front of the engine. This is the back of the engine. Here in the front, the intake for the air is actually right here in this little slit. This is all the fuel and oil regulators here. As the compressor spins, as the turbine spins, the compressor pulls in air. That air then goes up into the combustion chambers. As you can see here, like I was saying, there's 10 individual ones. As this compressed air enters the combustion chambers, it mixes with fuel and spark, creates that explosion, and then it exits out the exhaust, and that's what creates the thrust. This is Whittle's first jet-powered aircraft. It was put into the Gloster E-2839. First flight was 15 May 1941. This was put into aircraft later on by Britain in operational status in the Meteor 1 and Meteor 3. However, these aircraft were shown to be not great in terms of speed and range, so they only provided defense capabilities for Britain. They didn't send them further on into Europe. They were used for defensive purposes of the United Kingdom islands. Technology transferred to the United States. Britain transferred Whittle's jet engine design to the U.S. government. Whittle also visited the U.S. to help General Electric become a jet engine maker. General Electric began to copy Whittle's designs, and the first U.S. aircraft to fly with a GE Whittle jet engine was the Bell XP-59 in 1942. This is the Bell XP-59 Alpha that was created in 1942 as a developmental aircraft. However, because of the war effort and all of the resources that the United States was diverting for the war effort to build thousands and thousands of piston planes, tanks, and guns and everything else, it only remained a developmental aircraft for the United States. We did not send or have any operational jet aircraft in World War II. All right, Hans Pabst von Ohan. He is actually credited for the axial flow turbojet concept, which is slightly different than the centrifugal concept. However, his first design was a centrifugal. He would later on go on to design axial compressors before the centrifugal, and then later on just completely do away with the centrifugal compressor and just deal with the axial compressor, and made multiple turbines spin in that regard. Uh, he was a grad school at Gottingen University. He had the idea for a continuous cycle combustion engine in 1933. The experimental engine he built in 1937 was his first design, the HES-1. The evolution and third design, the one that actually went into the first jet engine to ever take flight in history, was an axial flow design combined with a centrifugal compressor, like I was just saying. Ohan's jet engine first flew on 27 August 1939, powering a Henkel HE-178, right before the start of World War II. Whittle's jet engine was first flown on 15 May 1941, powering a Gloster E-2839. This shows that Ohan's design actually took flight more than a year before Whittle's did. This is Ohan's first concept. This is a centrifugal design. Again, just troubleshooting, working out concepts. This isn't the one that went into an eventual aircraft. His third design went on to power the first jet-powered aircraft. Here is Han's design. This is a 3D printed version of it. It's just a little bit easier to see. Here you can see the axial compressor. That in and of itself isn't going to compress air down, a ton, but it is going to have an effect more than it's more than 2 to 1 most likely. And then it enters the centrifugal compressor here. So air comes in, hits the first axial compressor, hits the centrifugal compressor. That air gets pushed out up into the combustion chamber. You'll notice there is one combustion chamber for his engine instead of 10 individual ones. I would say this design is a lot more efficient and a better design than Whittle's, just because you don't have 10 individual combustion chambers and multiple things to go wrong. So as I was saying, that